When you're making your lid and your bottom, it says to get a piece of pine that's 24 inches long, and then it says to go ahead and cut it down in half at 12 inches. So you have two 12-inch pieces. So you should have then two pieces that look like this. And from there it then says choose the best half and plane the best half down to 5/8 of an inch. So after I've done that at 5/8 of an inch, this was my best half of the board. It is now going to be to the bottom of my box of this. Okay, and I'll get to that in a few steps here. The worst half, pine short, is then going to be used for my lid. And I get to cut that up into strips however I'd like to see fit. I'm going to get some colored strips from the cart, and I'm going to glue them together and make my, try and figure out how I want my lid to look. This here is an example of what it looks like after a lid has been made and planed down. I'll come back and show you this again in a few minutes. First off is the money aspect. If you're provided with all sorts of different type of wood, but I suggest that you don't use too much of the colored wood, the dark wood and the spalted wood here, the zebra wood here, even the maple. Most of it should be pine. So in this situation, I'm going to glue up an example of different types, but something that you could do, but I don't necessarily recommend. In this example, like I said, you have to pay extra if you use too much of the colored woods. The rule is if you go over 4 inches with colored woods, then you're going to have to pay more. So on this example here, I would look at this, I'd measure it out, and I'd say this piece is 1.5 inches. This piece here is 1 inch, so I've got 2.5 inches. That's another 1/2 inch, that's 3 inches, and this piece is 1/8. So I've got 3 5/8 of an inch of total exotic woods in here, less than 4 inches. I don't need to pay extra. This one here, I've got a lot of different woods, so I'm going to take these out. These are the only 2 pine pieces that I've got in there. That's over 6 inches. I'm going to have to pay an extra $5 for this lid. Some people don't mind, but I only buy enough for people to use 4 inches. So if you're going to use more, you got to pay for the extra. You want to first find a glue bottle that has some glue in it. If it doesn't have glue in it, let the teacher know so he can fill it up. You take when you're designing your lid, you want to make sure that you alternate light, dark, light. Okay. In this situation, I'm trying to accent this dark stuff, so I put some dark stuff right next to it to kind of draw the eye to it. This is when it gets planed down. This will be a real light color. This is light maple. This will kind of stay that color. But in any case, if you use too much colored stuff, then it all gets washed out and it all just kind of looks like wood. But so instead I say find a couple pieces or whatever it is, a design that you like, and go with it. You can glue them up this way if you wanted to, however you want. You could even do it diagonal. You could do it cross up top. You can do whatever your imagination comes up with, you can do. It just takes a little more time, a little more patience, and a little more effort. But the possibilities are quite endless. When you put the glue on, you want to put a nice, be generous, put a ribbon on like that, and then you got to rub it around, make sure there's no dry spots. I'm using wood that has been jointed and ripped, so I know this, where I just put the glue, is perfectly flat. This side has also been ripped down, so it's perfectly flat edge there. When I squeeze these together, like I'll show you on this one, if I were to squeeze these together, there's no gaps between there. Well, that's what we need, tight seams. And these are parallel lines. These are parallel lines on here. all these pieces have parallel lines. Put glue on the one side, I've got to put thin ribbon of glue on this side, and here on this. We only allow gluing to be done on the glue table. If you do it on another table, then it bleeds through and it ruins the tables. It doesn't ever get cleaned up. So glue only on the glue table. I prefer to use these eye clamps, these like beam clamps. They sit nicely in the grooves of the glue table so that you can then set them in there. And when I'm doing the lid, I like to have two spaces for clamps in between my clamps here. Spacing works out well because you're going to use 3 clamps. You need a clamp on, 2 clamps on the bottom and a clamp on the top. You tighten the clamp on the top first, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to continue this process, and I'm going to get glue on all the sides of all of these. It's also important to note that I've used only 3/4 inch material or taller. You're going to plane it down 2 5/8, and so if you go less than 3/4 of an inch, well, you end up having to plane it down too small, and the product doesn't come out very good. Making sure you don't get any glue on your clothing. You get all the glue on here, and we're ready to go. And it's all glued up. One thing I wanted to mention is I've gone through and I've made sure that the grain on these patterns alternate. So the grain on this one is vertical, then this one goes a little bit more horizontal, and then this one is vertical, this one is vertical in the opposite direction. So what that means is on here you can kind of tell that this grain goes this direction. Well, on my next board attached to it, the grain would go the opposite direction. So you want to make sure they alternate so that the board doesn't bow or cup over time. Now I'm ready to put these together. I'm going to put these on the clamp and put these together. I'm not going to tighten them yet. Instead, what I need to do is get a 3rd clamp, and this 3rd clamp goes on the top. I want to make sure that the long end goes the same as the long end as these. And I want to make sure before I put any glue on or put clamps on that these are backed out all the way. Now I'm going to tighten this middle one up first. And when I do that, sometimes the boards shift a little bit, and that's okay. But what I want to do is look underneath and make sure that the boards are still flat on these 2 clamps. That's going to be a key piece here. So I'm going to tighten those a little bit, and they were still flat, so that's good. And I'm going to kind of alternate as I tighten them. You don't have to go super tight, but you want to be pretty snug so that if you lift these up, they're not going to fall out. Now I would write my name on this board. I would take a wet paper towel and wipe off all the glue, and then set it by my cubby with the heavy end down. It's very important you put your name on it and wipe off all the glue. If I don't wipe off all the glue, I'm going to have a lot of work later on where I have to scrape it off by hand. If you don't put your name on it, somebody's either going to take it, and then you get into an argument about who it belongs to, or it gets taken off, lost, or I can't find your cubby to put it in. That's the glue up of the lid.